They read you the Riot Act, which is the all the laws and regulations which we know off by heart, but it is very contradictory if you read through it.
What should they be doing? Lastly and briefly then, what should the situation be?
Look, if they had said you've got to be in a lockdown, but you are allowed out for a day of exercise to walk.
Right.
Do not mix with your friends, most of our friends have all been vaccinated, but don't do that, or your family. And just at least get out and walk and exercise, which is important.
Okay. Did you sell the house in Spain?
Pardon?
Were you able to sell the place?
Yes, we were.
Well, at least that is good news. You managed to achieve that. I appreciate how you feel as regards being under self-isolation, solitary confinement, whatever you're going to call it. It is desperately, desperately difficult to do, and we will take more calls on that. But coming up after the news, speaking yesterday, the Prime Minister with a message to the British public ahead of Freedom Day, although, of course, he's under lock and key at Chequers.
We don't do it now. We've got to ask ourselves, when will we ever do it? So this is the right moment, but we've got to do it cautiously.
Cautiously, but of course industry saying now there are enormous problems in some instances. Staff shortages, 25, 30, if not more %. Business Secretary Kwasi Kwarteng will be taking your calls and answering those questions here on LBC on Call the Cabinet after the 9 o'clock news.
On your radio, on Global Player, and
Play LBC.
Leading Britain's conversation. This is LBC.
From Global's newsroom at 9 o'clock. Nightclubs have reopened on the morning almost all COVID restrictions in England have been lifted. The vast majority of legal requirements have been replaced with guidance and a switch to personal and corporate responsibility. Peter Marks is the chief executive of Recom, the UK's largest operator of nightclubs. Some of their sites opened partially overnight. He thinks it's long overdue.
Tonight is the night we're going to be opening properly, but we did have 8 of our venues open in a small way, and they probably had about a third of the capacity in there. But it is nice to be back after 16 months of being a political football.
Face masks will still be required by some transport operators, including the Manchester tram network. These commuters think despite COVID cases continuing to rise, it's the right time to get back to normality.
I think it's probably time to start living with it, and I'm quite excited.
Everyone's just sick of it now, and I think if he didn't do it sooner rather than later, I think everyone would have just done their own thing anyway.
We do kind of want the masks off, but then obviously the virus hasn't gone away just like that, last night at midnight.
The Prime Minister is urging people to be cautious and respectful of others as the rules are relaxed. Boris Johnson is self-isolating after being pinged by the NHS app because he'd been in close contact with Health Secretary Sajid Javid, a confirmed COVID case. Some frontline NHS and care workers in England will have an exemption from self-isolation if they're alerted by the app. The government says it'll apply in exceptional circumstances where the absence of staff could lead to a significant risk of harm. Nicola Sturgeon says Scotland's restrictions are being eased, not abandoned today. The whole nation is moving to level 0. It includes allowing up to 8 people to meet indoors. And the Royal Albert Hall will reopen at full capacity later with an event to celebrate its 150th anniversary. The concert will feature a new commission from composer David Arnold titled A Circle of Sound. In the city a short time ago, the FTSE 100 was trading down 104 points at 69.04, and the pound buys $1.37 and €1.16. And the weather, another sunny and hot day for many. Low cloud and some drizzle for coasts across the north. The odd shower possible further south later, and a high of 31 degrees. From Global's newsroom, I'm Simon Conway.
This is LBC from Global, leading Britain's conversation with Nick Ferrari at breakfast. Call the Cabinet. Ask your question now. Call 0345 6060 973 This is LBC.
It is, and it's 3 minutes after 9 on Monday, July the 19th, and delighted to say the senior member of Cabinet who's with me now is Business Secretary Kwasi Kwarteng in the studio, suitably socially distanced, although I think we could maybe even have had a dance together, but I assure you we're not. We're here. We're
Speak
here.
for yourself, Nick.
Yeah. Okay, Secretary of State, I hear. We're here to do serious business and take your calls. But one, if I may, thank you for coming in, and I trust you and your family are all well. Thank you for coming in, Secretary. So, just one question. Look, I know we are in a pandemic or even a pingdemic, but with that reverse turn, U-turn after 158 minutes, has the pantomime season arrived here with the Prime Minister as well, saying he was going to take part in that test and then deciding he wouldn't?
No, it hasn't, Nick. I think he looked at the situation and he completely made the right decision.
Which one was that? To take part in the daily test?
The second decision.
So the first decision was the wrong decision?
The first decision he reviewed, as
was
he
the wrong
said,
decision.
And he said that he would isolate like everyone else.
Well, yeah, but he did initially go into it. That was a very damaging decision, wasn't it?
I don't think it was damaging. I mean, the pilot scheme is being operated by 20 organisations, including Network Rail, Heathrow, Border Force. People in public services, frontline services, are operating the pilot scheme.
Right. He's done the right thing now?
I think he has done the right thing.
All right, OK. Let's get the calls through. Annette's in Liskeard. Annette, you're on the radio. Your question to Kwasi Kwarteng. Go ahead, Annette. Good morning.
Good morning, Nick. Good morning, Mr. Kwarteng.
Hi.
Hello. My question to you is, as the current daily COVID infection rate is now as high as it was in January, how can the government consider loosening restrictions and putting the onus on the public to do the right thing at such a critical time?
So I think that's a fair question. But of course, the big difference, Annette, between today and January is that we have a largely successful vaccine rollout. So 46 million people have had the first dose. 36 million have had both first and second doses. And that means that there's much more protection against the virus than was the case in January. And the second point I'm going to make is that if we don't lift restrictions now, when are we going to do so? Because the virus isn't going to go away. We have to learn to live with it. And I think doing so, lifting the restrictions ahead of the summer, during the summer, was the best time to lift the restrictions, because otherwise we simply would be in a permanent, semi-permanent lockdown.
Annette, your response to Mr. Kwarteng?
To my mind, I just think it's far too soon, particularly to lift the restrictions on masks. I think, of course, we do need to open up. The economy has to open up, but it's far, far too soon to see the sights we saw yesterday of people partying and not following any restrictions whatsoever. And I think masks should have stayed until such a time that we know more about the variants of the viruses and what they might do, and allow the scientists who are very concerned about today to allow the scientists more time to develop future vaccines against any variants that could be dangerous.
Mr. Kwarteng?
I think it's a fair point. I mean, of course, we discuss within government all these issues all the time. And I completely understand the idea that, we should try and restrict a bit longer, make people, protect people against, with face masks and all the rest of it. But there comes a time when you really, I think, have to decide what sort of country we're in. We could have a government essentially issuing diktats forever on this. Or you could make a decision that people should be able to decide for themselves. And I go back to the point about the vaccine, because it wasn't obvious 6 months ago that we would have a successful vaccine rollout. If you look at the hospitalization rates and, God forbid, the death rates, they're much, much lower than they were in January. And I think we've made the right decision to open up in the way that we have done today.
What level of infections do you imagine, daily rate, are we going to be seeing in a couple of weeks' time? Some people speak of 100, 150,000 more. What are the government estimates?
I don't speculate on the infection rates. What really I'm concerned about whenever I look at the data...
Well, they must have modelled it.
They have, but I would look at the data and look at the pressure on the NHS, the pressure on hospitalizations and death rates, which were terrible 6 months ago. I mean, they were really, really distressing. And I think the vaccine rollout has actually been more successful than anyone thought. And I think we're going to have to live with the virus. I think it's going to be around.
Right.
But the important thing is to get people jabbed.
But you say live with the virus. So currently there are around 50,000 cases a day, and you'll know better than I, there are around 500,000 people who have been pinged last week and were unable, actually 520,000, who were unable to work. Well, if we do the rough maths, were that figure to double, say to 100,000, that would be 1 million of the workforce who could go missing. Is that acceptable?
I think it's very difficult. I think I'm not pretending that any of this is easy, Nick. What I am saying is that we couldn't simply last in lockdown forever. And
how are businesses meant to do their business?
I think they are planning ahead. They are being very responsible. How can you plan ahead
when you don't know if Charlie or Sandra are going to turn up?
They're being very responsible. And actually, you talk about business. When I took up the job in January, the one thing that business wanted was a roadmap. And we gave them the roadmap.
You didn't. You told them June 21st was going to be, and then that was changed.
We told them April the 12th. Give us some credit. April the 12th, we opened up in the way we said on April the 12th. We'd said May the 17th. We stuck to that. June the 21st was changed. You're right. We looked at the data and extended that date.
That's not definite then, is it?
And extended the date. And now we're on 19th of July.
A lot of hoteliers and restaurateurs, their beer went flat, their food went off, and they had to throw everything away. That's not a roadmap.
No, but we're in a global pandemic. There's always going to be an element of uncertainty, Nick, when you have a pandemic the like of which we haven't seen in 100 years.
Let's go to some more calls. Annette, thank you. Sandra's in Beverley. Sandra, I think your question is on this theme, actually. Good morning, Sandra.
It is. When I heard the gentleman was going to be on this morning, I had to call.
Go on.
I'm up in Surrey, East Yorkshire. I have my own recruitment company.
Yes.
And just listening to the gentleman there say regarding the roadmap, last week I lost £7,200 in two candidates that were offered positions, but because they'd been pinged in between their interview and start date, they couldn't start. Mm-hmm. So my clients can't wait. They have a business to run as well, so they had to go elsewhere. So my two candidates lost their job. I lost my income, and it's the same with the interviews as well. I've got candidates that have been offered interviews. In between being offered and attending, they've been pinged, no symptoms, nothing. It's absolutely
So your question to Mr. Kwarteng would be what exactly?
So my question is, is it going to be tweaked? Is it going to be looked at? Because this is unworkable.
Mr. Kwarteng.
I accept it's a difficult situation. I'm really sorry to hear about your financial losses as well. But I think that we had to consider two things. We had to obviously open up in the way that we said we would and we wanted to. But at the same time, we've got to give extra precautions. So that's why we're going to be asking people to self-isolate till the 16th of August. And that's what the Prime Minister...
There's no movement
when they were pinged. There isn't any movement on it. It's going to be the 16th of August.
Right. So what happened with this telephone call? According to the Financial Times, you took last week in a call with business chiefs. Kwasi Kwarteng was made aware of the situation. What did you say to them? Nothing I can do.
I said I would make representations in government. I'd say that I would try and see what could be done. We've taken a collective decision. I mean, as you know, there are lots of different views. But we took a collective decision. I think this is the right decision.
You've got 700 plus people out not able to work at the country's largest car factory. Rolls-Royce can't operate properly. You've got trains and buses being cancelled and some NHS facilities running at critical staffing levels, and there's nothing you can do.
So look, there's a balance, isn't there?
Where's the balance there?
No, but hear me out, Nick. Some people are saying that we should have a further lockdown and that we should have lockdown for months. Other people are saying we should lift all restrictions. And what the government has done is essentially taken a balanced view. We've said we're going to reopen the economy as we have done on the 19th of July, and we're going to actually make sure that people self-isolate if they are pinged so that they don't represent a danger to other people. And I think that's a balanced view. And this restrictions on self-isolation, asking people to self-isolate, is not going to last forever. It's going to be the restrictions will be lifted entirely on pinging and self-isolation on the 16th of August.
What about Tony Blair's idea that was put forward yesterday that if, like me and possibly you, I don't know your age, but if you have been double vaccinated and you're pinged, you take a test, and if you're clear, you can go back to work. Mr. Blair's idea has a lot of merit, doesn't it, Mr. Kwarteng?
We're looking at all options, but for now, the policy is clear. We will expect people to self-isolate if they're pinged till...
But what's wrong with Mr. Blair's idea?
I'm not saying that anything is wrong.
Well, let's adopt it then.
Well, I think that what we need to do is to stick to the plan that we have. And I think it's a well-worked plan. We've considered all the options. None of them are easy. And we've taken a balanced approach between saying that all restrictions are gone or having a further lockdown.
But you
forever.
You recognise that equation. 520,000 last week. It's very possible it could get to 1 million who've been pinged. When you talk to the Prime Minister about that, what do you say and what does he say?
I say that there are interests of business that we need to look to, but also there are health considerations. I mean, you forget. It's easy to forget how serious the pandemic has been.
No, but I'm saying
once if you're
pinged and you're clear and you're double vaccinated, you can go back to work.
You have to self-isolate.
No, I know currently, but why aren't you saying to the Prime Minister, I tell you what, boss, Tony Blair's idea's got a bit of merit, hasn't it?
Well, I think that what we have to focus on is, the 19th of July, which we've successfully hit, and the 16th of August. It's 4 weeks. It's a long time.
It's a long time for business. I don't need to tell you as Business Secretary.
It is. And it's you will appreciate that, when I speak to business people, like just this morning, people raise this all the time. It's the single biggest issue. But I think that the health experts that we've talked to within the government have got a very clear reason for the 16th of August, and we're sticking to it.
All right, OK, let's go to more calls. Valentine's in Bromley. Thank you for your call, Sandra. Good luck with your business. I appreciate it. It's a new one. I hope it takes off. Valentine in Bromley, you're on the radio. Good morning.
Hi, good morning, Nick. Good morning, Mr. Kwarteng.
Hello.
I'm just wondering, with the racism that Saka, Sancho and Rashford received after taking their unfortunate mispens, do you agree that Priti Patel got it wrong when she labels their protest as a merely gesture politics with almost no merit?
OK, so this was Priti Patel suggesting that taking the knee had become gesture politics. Kwasi Kwarteng.
I think with regard to taking the knee, people should be allowed to express their views. I think what Priti Patel was saying was that it's not necessarily something that she would do. And when she says gesture politics, I don't know what phrase she came up with, but it is a gesture. I mean, it's something that isn't actually going to affect people's daily experience. And I think that was the point she was making. I think what is completely reprehensible is, firstly, the racist abuse, which is a scandal, frankly, in this day and age, and the fact that they're allowed to do that on social media. And the other thing is that, people from all sides try and politicise these issues, and I think that's really regrettable.
Did Priti Patel stoke the fires?
No, I don't think she did. I mean, if you look at football, and I've been following football from the 80s when I was a kid, and people used to throw bananas at black players and all of that kind of thing. So there's always been an ugly element to this. I don't think Priti Patel caused that. I think it's been in the game, regrettably, for many decades, and a lot of these trolls I probably weren't listening to what Priti Patel was saying. They had their views, and they expressed their ugly opinions in the way we all know.
And would you take the knee?
No, I wouldn't. I wouldn't, because I think it is a gesture. And I've always been in my career someone focused on actual outcomes. I want to do things. I want to change actual things. But I totally respect people's right to do that.
And you don't, because you just think it's not actually attacking the issue.
It's not addressing the issue. I think, and a lot of people, I'm not saying everybody, but a lot of people, and you see this in some companies, they kind of go through the motions, so they say the right things, but their mindset hasn't changed. And I think what you've got...
So it's a sticking plaster in a sense, really, on a problem.
Yeah, and it's a way of saying that I share your pain, but you're not actually thinking about the issue and how you can change, people's racial attitudes, combat prejudice. So I've always had the view that I'm much more action orientated. But again, I don't disrespect or call people names who do that. If they choose to do that, that's up to them. And they shouldn't be booed. They shouldn't be booed. And I've always been against that.
Indeed. And allowing that football is a major business, what do you think should happen when the next season kicks off in August? The players continue to take the knee? Does there need to be perhaps the first Saturday of the new season, and then we move on to try and address the actual issues? What needs to be done?
Well, that's up to them. I mean, in terms of taking, I wouldn't take the knee myself, but I'm perfectly happy to see people do that. It doesn't take very long, and they feel that they're making those expressions. I think what needs to be tackled is kind of relentless online abuse, and it's not just racial abuse. I mean, it's all kinds of filth and really hostile remarks that you see in social media, and I think that needs to be addressed.
So you didn't take the knee, so you wouldn't have clapped for the NHS last year on Thursday nights?
I did occasionally, and then sometimes I was away. Yeah, I mean, it was something that.
Well, one's a gesture. Why isn't? I don't understand.
Well, you do understand, because one is a gesture that is taken at the beginning of football matches, and the other, I think, outside my flat, and I saw people clapping, and I clapped.
Okay, all right. Thank you, Valentine. Sadiq in Uxbridge. Sadiq, you want to talk about Matt Hancock?
Yes. Hi. Good morning, Nick, and good morning, Mr. Kwarteng.
Hello, Sadiq.
Yeah, good. My question is: does the Matt Hancock scandal represent not just shortcomings and failures in the former health secretary, but also poor judgment shown by the PM? And what would he now do to restore public confidence? Obviously, this question was premature now. Obviously, it's pantomime, as Nick said from yesterday.
Yes.
So.
Yes. Okay. Kwasi Kwarteng.
So Matt Hancock was a colleague of mine, has been a colleague of mine for a long time, and I think he's I think he was a good public servant. I think he was a good health secretary. I think there was a lapse in judgment, and as a consequence of that, it cost him his job. He resigned from a job in which he loved dearly. He enjoyed what he was doing. I think he worked extremely hard, and I've said to him that I don't think anyone in government worked harder than Matt Hancock. But he paid the price for misjudgment.
Well, I think, actually, I'll come back to, but Sadiq's point is that on the Friday prior to Mr. Hancock's departure, the Prime Minister said he considered the matter closed, and then a matter of hours later, Mr. Hancock decided he was off, much as the same as it took him 2 hours to decide he wasn't going to take part in this sort of special testing system as regards catching or being pinged by COVID. These are the same, isn't it?
It's not the same. I mean, I think with
there's
Matt,
no direction from the Prime Minister.
No, there was considerable.
It's like a shopping trolley with a wheel missing.
He's not. I know you like quoting Dominic Cummings, but I don't think I agree with that. I think the Prime Minister is very focused on delivery. He's very focused on getting the vaccine.
But the matter
rollout.
wasn't closed, Mr. Kwarteng, was it, with regarding Matt Hancock?
Well, he resigned. I mean, it wasn't the Prime Minister who made Matt see sense, and Matt resigned.
Right. But why would the Prime Minister say the matter was closed?
So I think the Prime Minister is, and it's a really good trait actually in a boss, is extremely loyal to workforce. I think he was very, very, he was convinced that the NHS was going in the right direction. The vaccine rollout the NHS had driven was extremely successful. And this wasn't necessarily the time to get a new health secretary, but Matt resigned and we've moved on.
I'll come back to you in just a moment, Sadiq. Just finally about yesterday. Why was the decision? Did someone just make it up, the idea that he was going into this testing scheme, this pilot scheme?
I think you've gone on about the pilot scheme rightly, but as I've said, the pilot scheme was being used by 20 different organisations.
How does it
there
look
was
on
Border
Freedom
Force,
Day? Our Prime Minister is locked in checkers.
It's not a great look, but he has to do what everyone else is doing.
When did you last see him?
I saw him last week.
And when did you last see the health secretary?
I haven't seen him for a while. I know where you're going with this. I haven't seen him for quite a long time. I don't think I've actually seen him since he was appointed.
Oh, really?
No, because as you'll know, I mean, a lot of our calls in government with ministers are on Zoom,
right?
On Teams.
Okay. And do you carry the app?
So yeah, I do. I've got it.
You do.
I've got it.
Right, and you don't think there's an argument now possibly to switch it off?
No, I'm going to keep it on. I might be pinged, and then I'll self-isolate. Simple as that.
Let's get a quick response. Sadiq?
Yeah, my point is, going on to what Mr. Kwarteng says, how does an ordinary person get involved in the pilot scheme? We never knew about this. We only knew about it yesterday. So it's really unfair. It's one rule for you guys and one rule for us.
I don't think it is. I mean, obviously, if it's a pilot scheme, it's not initially as a pilot, only a handful of groups get to use it. But the people who were using it, who were in the scheme, were organisations like Network Rail, people who work for them, people who work in Border Force.
But why isn't it available to Sadiq? Why does he have to hear about it when he listens to LBC or reads it in the newspaper?
Well, Nick, it's a pilot, so...
But he might like to be part of the pilot. Sadiq?
Yes, that's right. I'd like to know about it.
Okay, well, what happens with the pilot?
The pilot is only for those that you want to have, isn't it? Let's be honest.
It was for, as I said, broad range of workers, people in Heathrow, people in Border Force, people at TfL, I understand, were involved in the pilot scheme.
All right, Sean, look after yourself. No pilot for you, but thank you. Sean in Stockwell, you're through to Kwasi Kwarteng. Go ahead, Sean.
Good morning.
Hello, Sean.
My question was really about pensions.
Oh, yes.
As someone who's recently retired, and having worked and put money into the pension scheme, I'm extremely concerned now that the government might overturn its promise on the triple lock pension scheme. And is the government not worried about the outcome of votes amongst the older population?
I think that's a fair question. I mean, in terms of the triple lock, the pension triple lock, it has been debated a lot, and I've always
is
been
it safe?
I think it is safe. I mean, I've always been of the view that we should stick to what we wrote in the manifesto. Of course, things have happened, like COVID, like the fact that we spent £350 billion in 1 year to support the economy. And I think any government, any group of politicians or civil servants will debate how we can raise the money. But as far as I am concerned, the triple lock is still here.
And just remind everybody, what is the triple lock? What does it comprise?
So it's three elements. So there's it says that pensions will rise the highest of inflation, which is wages, and 2.5%.
But what are the other two components of the triple lock?
So those are the three components of it. So there's the 2.5%.
It's CPI, CPI. Okay, absolutely right. And it raises by the highest of that.
That's right.
Okay. Sean, thank you for that. Questions on the email. Rachel in Bexley, when will the furlough scheme end?
So the furlough scheme is going to end, as I understand, at the end of September. But it's being tapered off. So it's not a question of simply having full furlough payments one day and then nothing the next. Employers are expected.
How much does it cost?
It's cost billions and billions of pounds. I mean, because it's an ongoing figure.
But roughly, how many billions and billions of pounds?
Well, we've supported to the extent, I think it's about 60 billion, but I'll have to check on that. But
65.9.
65.9, sorry.
That's all right.
You see, you're always trying to catch me.
No, I'm not trying to catch you. Just checking. Checking you've done your homework.
But the total support...
65.9, but obviously it will grow. That's a vast sum of money.
Yeah, it is a vast sum. But that's part of the £350 billion that I mentioned. So not just the furlough, but all the other schemes, the loans that we've given, the support that we've given in that, the VAT holiday, those sorts of things have cost the Exchequer £350 billion. And just to put that in perspective, Nick, when I came in and I first met you as a young MP 11 years ago, 2010.
Was it that long ago?
It was a very long time ago.
Look where your career's gone. Here am I, still here. Look at you. You're in cabinet meetings. You're holding Zoom calls with the health secretary.
Absolutely.
Living the dream.
But at that time, the deficit was 160 billion. So that gives you a measure of how much 350 billion is. The deficit was huge when we came in 2010, but obviously we've supported the economy to a huge extent as well.
One more before we go back to the calls. Andrew, you'll be the next caller. Let's take this off the emails, texts and tweets. So this is Pierre in Kent. Why is the UK government forcing people who are double jabbed abroad to quarantine for 10 days when they come to the UK? Other countries accept the NHS vaccination. Why don't we accept ones from other countries?
I think we've got to be very cautious. I think we're very protective of communities here. I think we've had experiences.
So we don't respect Spanish or Australian or American or whatever it might be health service jabs?
No, of course we respect them, but we want to be extra safe so that people can be protected here. I mean,
but these could be businessmen and women coming in.
They could be, but everyone, as you say, has to follow the rules. You'd be the first person.
We could be losing billions of pounds worth of business and job opportunities.
I think there are some exemptions that you probably are aware of in the case of people investing huge amounts to create jobs. I think the threshold is something like 500 jobs, and I was very pleased, Nick, as you remember, going to Sunderland, and we announced £1 billion from Nissan in Japan, and they came here, and it was a very, very successul day.
And again, when does this go? Will this go in August, the famous August the 16th? This restriction on those who vaccinated from other countries.
I think so, but I'm not. I'll have to get back to you. I mean, clearly it's a health issue, which of great importance, and perhaps you should address it to Sajid Javid. But of course, he's self-isolating.
We'll have to get him on a Zoom. Andrew in Braintree, you're through to Kwasi Kwarteng. Go ahead, Andrew.
Morning, Nick. Morning, Secretary of State.
Morning, Andrew.
I was at the European final at Wembley a couple of Sundays ago and saw the absolute disaster that was the security put in place. Would you accept that the Metropolitan Police lost total control of the situation that evening?
I wouldn't accept that. I would say that they've done a good job. I mean, I saw the pictures. I wasn't there physically, and they were a matter of concern. And the fact that people could breach those barriers was concerning. But I think that the police have done a huge amount of good work in the tournament, and generally the tournament was very well policed.
They did a good job. Did they? 4,000 people got in without tickets. There was
so that was on the last
widespread
day.
Criminality. Yes, well, that's what I think, Andrew. There was widespread criminality. There were people openly taking drugs, drunken behaviour, and people were robbed of their wristwatches. And that's a good job.
So
in your book,
the point I was making, Nick, was that across the tournament,
hate to see a bad job.
Across the tournament,
no, but
the matches.
Well, let's go, Andrew. Were you asking for the tournament, or were you asking for the final that you attended Sunday before last?
No, just the final. The tournament,
I
agree they did a pretty good job, but the final was an absolute disaster.
I think the final, they were under a lot of pressure, and I won't say. I think
was it a disaster?
I wouldn't say it was a disaster.
You're the business secretary. We'd like to get 2030 World Cup 2030 here. What would it do for other countries watching that we're unable to police a final where there wasn't even a full attendance?
But I think that across the tournament it was okay. And that
let's suspend that for a moment. Yes,
sure.
But we know that you won't accept that it was a bad job.
I think it was a bad job. I actually think it was a bad job. I'm prepared to say that. Clearly, seeing fans crossing barricades, fighting, that is not a good look.
Well, it's also the health of stewards and others
absolutely.
who are caught in the middle.
So it was. But we're looking at that. The Home Secretary was very clear that she's holding the Met Commissioner to account. And we're trying to see how we can improve.
Andrew, quick response from you before we move on. Got time for one more, I think. Andrew?
It was just a shocking display by the Met Police. And I haven't seen anything that badly organised since probably the late 80s, early 90s.
Did you feel unsafe, Andrew?
No, but that's probably because I've been to much worse football matches in my time, more than anything else.
I think we'll probably suspend it there. I dread to think where you have. Let's instead get one last call in, Andrew. Thank you. Richard in Macclesfield, you're through to the Business Secretary. Richard, go ahead, sir.
Hello, Nick.
Good morning, sir.
Hello, Richard.
I'm a travel agent. Travel agents have received the lowest restart grants and no sector support, despite the fact that we're still earning little or no commission. Considering how much we've suffered over the last 18 months and with the lack of certainty as to when holidays will restart properly, again due to mixed messages given by government ministers and the lack of client confidence, what will you do to protect us and our colleagues? And why are we bottom of the list in terms of economic support? Why are you ignoring travel agents?
I don't think we are. I think, one of the things...
might think differently. But
one of the things that you'll appreciate is that as a constituency MP in Spelthorne, there are lots of people who operate travel businesses, and they've made the same point to me. They've said, you're not looking after us. And I've said that, we've given loans, you may have benefited from the furlough scheme. There has been some support. But what we have avoided, I think, in this crisis is trying to slice and dice bits of the economy in terms of taking a sector by sector approach. We've given lots of general support, which people have.
And you would never see targeted for the theatre, for the wedding industry.
I think going forward. So in the immediate impact of the pandemic, I think we took a very general approach.
Yes.
But as business secretary, I am looking at a more sectoral
But what would that
approach.
mean for Richard in Macclesfield?
Well, we need to. We've come up with, for example, in the hospitality sector, we've got a hospitality strategy which outlines ways in which we can help the sector going forward. And I think travel agents are very much part of that conversation.
So they could be getting a similar sort of deal.
Well, I'm looking at ways in which we can support key businesses.
Richard, either percentage-wise or money, whichever you prefer. How much have you lost this year, or however you want to quantify it, Richard? Just lastly.
We've refunded £1.8 million.
You've refunded 1.8 million?
Yeah.
Yeah. Okay. So we've had to work throughout, so we've not been able to take advantage of furlough. And the hairdressers next door and opposite got 8,000 when we had the restart grant, got 2,667. Mr. Rutley, our MP, said that was because we've been trading throughout, but you had a travel ban on, so how could they?
Well, David Rutley is I think a very good MP, Richard. But also a lot of the restart grants. There've been issues with local councils distributing the money as well in terms of assistance, so that might be an issue. But what I would do, Richard, is get in touch with the business department. Get in touch with Nick maybe, and then he can refer back.
Yes, of course I can.
There are specifics here that I'm not on top of.
Okay, which we can make happen. Richard, stay on the line. One of my colleagues will take your details and pass on. Finally, Mr. Kwarteng, you and your department featured in one of the newspapers yesterday. The Unite Union have written to you, warning the fall in cash payments and employers interfering with tips has created a perfect storm. It's wiped out recent rises in the living wage and minimum wage, and they're very concerned that in some instances Hospitality workers are left out of pocket. 2/3 of employees in the sector taking a share of customer gratuities. If I want to tip my waiter or waitress, should go to them, shouldn't it, Mr. Kwarteng?
It should do. I mean, it's the first I've heard of this particular issue, but
the union said it wrote you, but I'm sure you get many letters.
I get lots of letters. I'll probably get back this morning and see it. And also we're looking at an employment bill. We're looking at legislation to try and make sure
that... It's not fair that the owner of the restaurant takes the waiter's tip.
Clearly not. I mean, the tip is specifically for the service that the waiter, he or she, has given. So why the employer should take that is a mystery to me. That shouldn't happen.
All right. Finally, your message on Partial Freedom Day in England and businesses that have to struggle on for 3 or 4 weeks. A final word to those, Mr. Kwarteng.
Well, I would say, as I would, you'd expect me to be cautious, enjoy the freedoms, enjoy the fact that we're back on track, enjoy the fact that we've vaccinated huge numbers of people in this country, but there's still risk out there, and I'd suggest that people be a bit cautious.
May your app stay ping-free.
Thank you.
Kwasi Kwarteng, thank you for appearing here on
Thank
LBC,
you.
where news of Simon Conway's next.
The Business Secretary has told LBC now is the right time to lift almost all COVID restrictions, despite new daily cases being at their highest since January. Kwasi Kwarteng has highlighted the success of the vaccine rollout and also says if not now, then when? Most legal measures in England ended at midnight, with a move to guidance and personal responsibility. Mr. Kwarteng's also ruled out bringing forward the date when the rules on